After you've roughed off the main body of the floor and the edges, you've then got to rough off the corners. So maybe with a 36 or a 40 grit, you need to sand it down so it's flat and clean. That's the most important thing, flat and clean. You can use a palm sander, and you can get like a second-hand palm sander from a tool hire place or tool shops. Sometimes they have second-hand tools. You can get a Delta sander like this. I mean, this is the more expensive one and it's £150, but you can get ones like this that are £60 if you wanted to buy it. But as I say, you could just buy a cheap palm sander, or you can scrape it with this is a tungsten carbide scraper, or you can just do it by hand because it's such a small area. You can just do it by hand, or you can scrape it and then sand it by hand. So if you come a little closer, let's say it's a really proud lip on the edges here. You can get a chisel and just chisel the surface off, and then just rub it smooth with your 40 grit, and then continue with the rest of the sanding process. So on this corner, I'm going to scrape it with the tungsten carbide scraper blade, and then I'm just going to rub it down by hand. You can see it's done a fairly good job of clearing the old finish off. Going across the grain here, I'm actually doing it slightly diagonally. If you go straight across the grain, it can rip the wood a little bit, makes it a bit untidy. So if you just sort of kind of do it at an angle. So now it's clean. You can just grab a disc and just as with anything, going across the grain is more aggressive than going with the grain. If it's a bit of a rough corner, then go across the grain, but always just finish it off by going straight. So this corner here, I'm just going to try and sand it down by hand. So I don't know if you can see it there. If you don't want to buy a scraper, you know, that's $10–15. So just with a disc, you can this is quite a rough corner, so just to demonstrate that if you're really trying to save money, then you know it is possible to do it like that. Obviously the easiest and quickest way is just with a detail sander. So once you've got the rough grit sanding, say the diagonal and the straight 40 or 36, then the 36 or 40 around the edge, then you do the 36 or 40 in the corners, and then you carry on going up the grits with the big floor sander. So onto a 60 or 50, and then 80 or 100, and then 120, and then you go around the edges with the edger, and then onto the finishing sander. So you do the edges, the final edges, and then the final corners with an 80 grit. It's not a problem to skip from a 36 to an 80 grit on the corners because they're so small. You can just make sure all those 36 scratches are out. So